The name Frankenstein conjures images of a hulking green monster with bolts in his neck, a figure now so ingrained in pop culture that it's become a separate entity from the novel itself. But Frankenstein, written by Mary Shelley in 1818, is far more than just a monster story. It's a novel that explores the quest for identity and belonging, the darkest corners of human ambition, and the dangers of scientific overreach, themes perhaps more relevant today than ever. But how did Frankenstein come to be? Why has it endured for over 200 years as one of the most influential works of genre literature, fusing with both pop culture and the English language? Early 19th century England saw the Romantic movement in full swing, a time when writers and poets were preoccupied with nature, emotion, and the power of the individual. Enlightenment ideals of reason and scientific thought offered a competing perspective to British society. Amid all this intellectual ferment, 18-year-old Mary Shelley began writing her novel. It was born in the summer of 1816, as Mary, her husband, the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, and their famous poet friend Lord Byron holidayed at Byron's villa near Lake Geneva in Switzerland. That summer, famously known as the Year Without a Summer, was marked by torrential rain and a gloomy atmosphere. To pass the time, Byron suggested they each write a ghost story. Shelley's idea would become Frankenstein, a novel born of a dream she had about a scientist who brings life to a creature, only to then abandon it in horror, with dire consequences. This she crafted into the story of Victor Frankenstein, a young, soon-to-be-married scientist who becomes obsessed with transcending the limits of life and death, echoing boldness in romantic thought. After discovering the secret of animating life, Victor creates a creature from beautiful body parts, but, appalled by its appearance once revived, feeling guilty and regretful, he abandons it. Shelley describes an ugly-faced humanoid with yellow, translucent skin, but early 20th century filmmakers would turn her monster green, give it a flat-topped head, and add bolts to its neck. Whatever its true appearance, in the novel, Frankenstein's monster, rejected by both its creator and society, embarks on a tragic journey seeking companionship, but also bloodthirsty revenge. 19th century writers were keenly experimenting with point of view, and Shelley uses letters and first-person narratives to allow both Victor and his creation to each tell their side of the story. Her writing is lush and dramatic, with a focus on the sublime, which was a central theme of Romanticism, and she tackles the ethical and emotional dilemmas of scientific experimentation. Why has this novel stood the test of time? Perhaps because, with its dark atmosphere and exploration of human obsession and hubris, it successfully blends elements from several genres. While variously claimed to be science fiction, generic horror, or gothic tragedy, the book's emotional depth and exploration of philosophical themes gift it unique literary significance. Upon its release, Frankenstein received mixed reviews, some critics lauding its creativity, daring, and striking commentaries on unchecked ambition and the dangers of rogue or cavalier science. The core idea of creating life, a theme prefiguring modern concerns about cloning and artificial intelligence, seemed profoundly ahead of its time and remains the novel's greatest achievement. However, other critics called its writing style overly melodramatic, criticised its structural use of letters as framing devices, or found the characters' motivations unconvincing or too simplistic. Yet, over time, Frankenstein has held its ground as a complex exploration of isolation, identity, and ethical dilemmas born of scientific progress, a ubiquitous trope of the science fiction genre. One of the most filmed stories in history, It can boast over 50 adaptations from 1910 onwards. The iconic 1931 version, grounding the Boris Karloff with neck-bolts monster. That monster triggered a modern global graffiti craze and inspired countless derivative films, TV shows and comic books, one even pitting Marvel's X-Men against Frankenstein's monster. And, like Shakespeare, Mary Shelley's left a mark on the English language itself. Frankenstein's monster, and he's created a monster. Now among the favourite rhetorical barbs of politicians. Modern movies like the Terminator franchise and Ex Machina are reinterpretations of Shelley's original themes of creating later hostile artificial life and the consequences of man playing God. But Frankenstein's endurance lies in more than pop culture impact. It resonates with us because of its deeper, fundamental questions about creation, accountability, what it means to be human. In today's world of genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and bioethics, Shelley's dark tale is more relevant than ever. Its core questions still not fully confronted, let alone answered. What happens when we transcend the limits of nature? What if, like her scientist Victor, we make something we cannot control? And who takes responsibility when that creation turns ugly? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein remains the fascinating case of how a literary classic and cultural icon sprang from a most unlikely source. A teenage girl's summer holiday nightmare.
Did Victor Frankenstein sell his soul to the new devil of scientific overreach? You might find it intriguing to compare his case with the most famous dark deal doer in literature, who awaits in episode 24.